Are you excited for the last session?
Absolutely.
So this is it. Very last session. It's been a class weekend. Just while we're getting the session sorted, we'll go over the house rules. I'm sure plenty of you have heard these multiple times by now. So please add your name and if you like your pronouns into your Zoom profile. You'll be muted on entering the session, but you can keep your cameras on if you like, and but no pressure. Feel free to turn them off and just chill. Please be kind and mindful of others' privacy. If you have any questions or comments throughout the session, just give us a shout through the chat or the Q&A function. And if anyone is struggling with anything that comes up during a session, we have the support of our therapists available through Slack, if you're an RR participant, or via email. So please feel free to contact Lisa Kelly or Stephen Miller. Their emails there are on the screen. And don't forget to share on social media all the work that you do, and don't forget to tag the Imaginary Make Me Play and use the hashtag Head and Heart too. Okay, cool. So I think that's everybody in now. So welcome everyone. Very last session, and we're going to hear we talk from Catherine Scott from the Fermanagh Museum about the power of words, and then that'll be followed by a chat from Joanne Ball, who's an art therapist, and she's going to lead us in some journaling activities. So make sure you all have a notebook and something to write with, and maybe a small plate as well, like a side plate, just so that you can draw around it. Okay, you happy to take it away, Catherine?
I am indeed, Jess. If you stop sharing, I'll start sharing.
Perfect.
Okay, now. I say I'm happy to take it away, and then I'm looking for the share function, and it has somehow disappeared on me. Why would that be? Oh, here we go. Right, that's much better.
Got it now.
There we go. Can everybody see that okay? Perfect. Yep. Okay. First of all, I just want to say I'm really delighted to be here this afternoon, and I know the ladies are really excited as well, as this is the last kind of part of their festival, the Head and Heart Mental Health Festival. I'm just going to talk for about 20-25 minutes from a personal perspective, really, in the first instance, but also how I suppose that personal perspective has influenced what I've been doing in work. Technically speaking, I'm a Learning and Access Officer here in Fermanagh County Museum. On a practical level, that means I pretty much do any and everything. I've been here for almost 20 years, which is frightening. When I see young faces looking back at me, I feel older and older by the day. I decided when Clodagh first asked me about doing this to call the session Away with Words. The sort of, if you like, the whimsical nature of the title is quite deliberate, okay? But as is the image that accompanies it. So as opposed to being away with the birds, the notion is to be away with words. And I think in my work life, in my personal life, and in many perspectives, words are really important. And in some instances, words are all we have. And it's really important sometimes to use the right words. And it's really important sometimes not to use other words, okay? This is the subject which is really very close to my heart and is alive in my head for many reasons on a daily basis. On a very personal note, really from childhood right through to this day, it is an issue in terms of the head and the heart that has been alive in my life. And I'm also very conscious of the issues that it brings to those suffering with a mental health issue, and also very mindful of the real impact that it has on those people who love them and those people who are with them and are the people who are trying to provide what I have termed the scaffolding within their world. And I suppose what the next sort of 15-20 minutes is about is that notion of a healthy mind in a healthy body, mens sana in corpus sana, which I learned when I was 15 from my GCSEs. And that kind of notion whereby just simple things like walking, exercise, being in touch with the world outside can have a hugely positive impact on your well-being and those around you. What I did, and funny, when Joanne and I spoke and we hadn't spoken about what we were going to deliver, we realised that words was something that was going to come up quite a bit in both of our presentations. And when Clodagh first asked me about this, I suppose I was actually out walking. I've tried to go to the next screen, it hasn't moved, we'll try again. I was out walking and thinking about what I was going to talk to you about today. It still hasn't moved. I'm going to hit again and hopefully it will move to the next screen. Maybe it doesn't want to move to the next screen. Okay, so my screen seems to have frozen.
Oh no.
So bear with me. And I will see if it, we're on to the next page. So I was out walking with my wee girl who is 12 next week. And I was just thinking about words that are important to me and important in terms of the subject that we're looking at today. And obviously walking and talking while you walk, but also stopping. And it is that taking a moment to see the extraordinary beauty that is around us and everything that entails, whether it's meeting people along the way when you're out walking, stopping to talk to people, or just literally taking that moment. The word butterfly is there because it was a word that my daughter actually used that day when we were out walking, and she was talking for some reason about butterflies. And she said to me, "Mommy, you know, a butterfly can't see how beautiful it is because it can't see its own reflection." And I just thought that was an amazing, something that had never occurred to me, you know, but being sort of appreciative of your own beauty. The next words, happiness lies, basically is the tag on my WhatsApp, which is the happiness lies in the smallest of moments. And I really think that that is true. And in those smallest of moments to see and to identify that happiness. The other thing that I'm very conscious of, and I suppose because, again, as I was saying, that kind of away with the words, is the current phraseology around mental health and well-being, and how it has become, even within my world, in, you know, development officer as in a museum, we now have well-being as part of my job description, which is something, I suppose, when I started here, as I say, almost 20 years ago, was as far from my sort of radar as you can imagine. And it's now within my job description, which is scary in one instance. I do a lot of work, obviously, with children, and I also do a lot of work in terms of reminiscence. Not necessarily, I was going to say with older people, and it can be with older people, but it can be people who are actually quite young, but just that wee bit older. And the talk or the walk that I'm going to talk you through shortly really has stemmed from that reminiscence work. So just other concepts that sort of came into my head that day were strength from within, and that sort of notion of healing thyself by thyself. Thyself is thy only friend and thyself is thy only foe is written in a big picture in my mum and dad's hall, and I've walked past it forever in my life. And it's also that notion then, as I mentioned earlier, of scaffolding from without. We're talking about journals today, obviously, and writing. And towards the end, I'm going to just read you a little from The Great Gatsby, which I read when I was 17, which is a long time ago, trust me. And the impact that some of those words had on me and are still with me today. Pepys Diary, for the simple reason, with lockdown, everybody was talking about Pepys Diary, you know, and somebody actually got me a copy of it for Christmas. And just that notion of journaling and writing everything down, you know, as an historian, it's nothing new. That's what people have done forever, you know, from the period obviously onwards from prehistory, we have that notion of writing things down, drawing things down, even drawing them on the wall of a cave, you know. So annotating our history, our world around us is something which has been done from the year dot. The other thing then, I suppose, poetry and words, and you will notice when I'm bringing you through just a few of the stops along the reminiscence walk, it's not a history walk, it is a reminiscence walk, and I've used a lot of poetry in the walk. There's a beautiful, really underrated book by Michael and Claire Monpergo. It's a child's book called Where My Wellies Take Me, and it is the story of Pippa who goes for a walk, and along the walk, who she meets, what she meets along the way. And he beautifully integrates all sorts of poetry and prose within the book. It is a fabulous book. If you haven't come across it, there's loads of it on Amazon for a fiver. Where My Wellies Take Me is probably to my mind, one of the best children's books ever written. And the other sort of notion, I suppose, then that came into my head were those visceral feelings. So whilst we think about words and things being thought out, and we're trying to word something beautifully, and does that read well in terms of reminiscence, in terms of everything we do, there are also those visceral feelings which are very, very hard, in my head at least, to actually put into words because they are feelings. But it's those sort of feelings, I suppose, that we are trying to get people when they're on these reminiscence walks, those sort of memories that we're trying to get them to think about in the best way. Fingers crossed, I'm going to try to move to the next slide. Whoa, okay. So this then, I suppose, is an introduction to the reminiscence walk and talk, which is on the Broad Meadow of Enniskillen. I'm in work today. I've already been around the Broad Meadow once. I will take 20 minutes at lunchtime. And then this afternoon, when Emily comes to meet me, I would probably walk along the Broad Meadow again. One of the things which lockdown really, really saw was people walking. You know, I mean, I've been an avid walker for years. I walk far too much every day, but it really is a hugely integral and important part of my day, every day, whether that means doing it at 6 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night, just to get that walking in. So when I was approached by the age-friendly officer within the council, and she said, we want to do something along the Broad Meadow. You know, it's been really used, it's been used by a lot of people. We decided we would do what is called, they're like sort of signal signs. So they're not big panels. They're not sort of really wordy, okay? They're just little signal signs that pull up. There's a photograph and there's a few words. And it really is that notion of walking, talking and stopping. And just stop at that moment to look around you and to think. So in my lovely idealistic world, I'm thinking, you know, you're going on this walk and it is that notion that the whole world smells new. When you're doing reminiscence with people, and when we're talking even with students about history and all sorts of things, we talk about words, we talk about actions, we talk about how things looked, but even that notion of how things smelled, you know, and sort of freshly cut grass, flowers, whatever it might be, or how it smells when it's about to rain. All those things are beautiful senses that we kind of are aware of, but we need to sort of maybe sometimes make ourselves know that we're aware of. And to think really then when we're going along the Broad Meadow, that there is nothing else in the world to think about than the birds and the trees and the water by the shore. So just something really as simple as that. I'm going to give you a wee bit on the boring end of it as far as I'm concerned. Well, it's not boring, but we all know this, but I'll just tell you anyway. In terms of walking and in terms of contact with nature and in terms of what children do at school, that the world around us, we know from research, and a lot of research has got into sort of the impact that connection with nature has on us, that it will improve our self-perception, it will improve our self-esteem, it will improve our mood and our quality of sleep just by being outside in the fresh air. It reduces our levels of stress, anxiety and fatigue. Physically active people, okay, have up to a 30% reduced risk of actually becoming depressed, and staying active helps those who have been depressed to recover from that depression. In older people, and this is where I suppose in terms of my reminiscence work, staying active can improve cognitive function, memory, attention, and also reduces the risk of cognitive decline and dementia. Okay, so something as simple as let's go for a walk can do all that. Spending time then in green space or bringing nature into your everyday life can benefit then both your physical and mental well-being. If you Google it, there is a practice of GPs in Edinburgh who before lockdown were very keen to prescribe nature. And that's exactly what they're trying to do now with sort of the lifting of the lockdown. And obviously the medical world has been under siege for the last 18 months. But that notion that it is accepted, you know, to go in and you're prescribed nature and that contact with the outside world. What I'll do now then, I just have a couple of photographs that are being used within the exhibition. I love this photograph. There are 2 such photographs. They fell out of a book about 2-3 years when I was working in the museum, a book that had been donated to the museum by a photographer. This area is completely unrecognisable now. It's literally at my front door here in the museum, an area that's now a car park. The houses behind, my mommy's granny lived in one of those, and the slide was brought to this area twice a year. The area was called the Taxes Tennis because the tax office had a tennis court there. And there was a Mr. Hall who brought the slide here for the children twice a year. As I say, I'm in work today and I went over to the other building just to go to the toilet. And there was a gentleman there with his wife and he was just saying, you don't get slides like that anymore. And you don't get slides like that anymore. Health and safety would have a nightmare. Can you imagine the risk assessment for that slide? And those children patiently queuing for their go on the slide. The wonderful thing about this is we have it up in the exhibition at the minute and it's on our website as well. And, you know, it's that detailed and clear a photograph, but you could actually, you know, start to look, this is 50s, you know, am I in that photograph? And there's every sort of possibility, you know, that my mom's age group now, that they're in the photograph. So it's a beautiful photograph that will be used on the 3rd stop, the 3rd signal sign of waiting in line then along the Broad Meadow. The next photograph, and this is quite telling of what people think acceptable and what people think not. So you can see there with this beautiful, beautiful little image. I love this image. I decided initially to put it Sonnet 104 by William Shakespeare with it, which is the friendship bench. So part of the walk, the reminiscence walk, will have a friendship bench, which is, we deliberately picked a bench which is sort of about halfway along, just at an area where the water widens out and people do stop. So to me, fair friend, you never can be old, for as you were when I first your eye eyed, such seems your beauty still. And believe it or believe it not, I was told, I don't think they'd like Shakespeare. So I was like, okay. So on the signal sign, it would actually say, there are no strangers here, only friends you haven't met, which apparently they think people will kind of get more. For today, I'm sticking with Shakespeare, okay? And I think it's just a beautiful image, and just that notion of stopping at the friendship bench. Friends by the Shore, I've included this photograph deliberately, and I know Joanne has been journaling for a very long time, and you'll see beneath it I've written MOT's album, and I've missed a one, I apologise. Muriel Olive Trimble kept, you would love it, Joanne, the most beautiful journal ever. It started as a yearbook in 1909, and she continued to add to it until 1924. It is amazing as an archive, I suppose, if you want to look at it like that, but it is hugely amazing in terms of just a capsule of somebody's life. She starts with some photographs, newspaper cuttings, poems that have been sent to her, doodles on different pages. I spent about 4 months, probably, some time ago of my life here, scanning every page in this beautiful red leather-bound album before we returned it to the family. And the girl in the centre ultimately would be Muriel Olive Trimble's niece. And this photograph is from about 1922. And we're using this again along the Broad Meadow walk in terms of Friends by the Shore, where I have a little text about dipping your toes in the water and skimming stones. So again, those things that we all do and that we all then can think about. And that's over towards the corner in terms of the reminiscence walk. This photograph I think I showed in the last presentation which I did, and I suppose it has particular resonance for me because the gentleman at the very centre is my granda, and I never met my granda. My sister, with whom I get on really well, there's a year and 9 months between us, you know, sisters with that little age between them. Well, she was the only one of all his grandchildren who he met. And situated then, pictured on the very left of the image that you see is my daddy, that wee boy with the white collar. He is now 76 years of age. The baby turned 70 this year, okay? The little girl beside my daddy is Margaret, who lives in Australia, and the lady behind is Mary. And then the little girl actually behind my granda isn't a family member, but Josie, she lived beside them on Queen Street. And the little boy in a huff is my Uncle Kevin. He probably still huffs quite a bit, but that's probably neither here nor there. And I just love this photograph. And I think I love this photograph obviously so much because there's a family resonance with it. But so many people have these photographs of their nanny, their granda, their aunties, their uncles, you know. And when I asked Pat, who's the baby, you know, was it okay? Obviously I sent out a wee message on the family WhatsApp, can I use this photograph? And they're like, yeah, we're going to be like, you know, enshrined in the Broad Meadow forever. Like, yeah, you're going to be there forever, you know. But it's a beautiful, I suppose, moment in time captured along the Broad Meadow. And as I say, to me, it's just lovely because the first photographs, believe it or believe it not, that I really saw of my granda Paul were only latterly. These actually had gone off to Australia with Margaret. And during lockdown, a lot of them were sort of sent through on the family WhatsApp. But a lot of them, I just would have seen him really in a boat. He was a big fisherman, so I didn't really get a clear picture of him. Okay, so personally, it's a photograph that I love. Another one which I included along the way was one for sorrow, two for joy. I don't know if any of you live your life by sort of magpie rules or not. I was going to Belfast yesterday. We saw one, salute the magpie. Emily then says, I saw two at Dungannon, so, you know, it was okay. And it's one of those things that, believe it or not, some people don't know, some people do know. So it's slightly different, the one that's there, one for money. I've never heard that. There are different variations of the magpie poem. So one for sorrow is the normal, two for joy, three for a girl, four for a boy, five for silver, six for gold, seven for a secret never to be told, 8 for a letter from over the sea, and 9 for a love that never can be. Okay. And again, that's used along the reminiscence walk because to me, it is resonant of childhood and people who sort of introduced me in the first instance to the magpie poem. So again, very simple, very straightforward, a little stop along the way. And I know of about 5 minutes, so I'm coming to my close pretty soon. This then is my second last slide. And at the very beginning, I mentioned that 1,000 years ago, I had read The Great Gatsby. My dad taught English for years. I actually didn't do A-level English, my sister did. So there was any number of copies of The Great Gatsby lying about the house. And I read it, and I have reread it since. And I would sit and read it again. It and Wuthering Heights are the two that I'd sit and read over and over again. And this is just a very small section from The Great Gatsby that I love. And when you think about it, the narrator in The Great Gatsby, he is in effect journaling their lives. He's commenting on their lives because it's written, you know, from his perspective. So it reads, for what it's worth, it's never too late, or in my case, too early, to be whoever you want to be. There's no time limit. Start whenever you want. You can change or stay the same. There are no rules to this thing. We can make the best or the worst of it. I hope you make the best of it. I hope you see things that startle you. I hope you feel things you've never felt before. I hope you meet people who have a different point of view. And I hope you live a life you're proud of. And if you're not, I hope you have the courage to start all over again. You know, fabulously moving piece. The last photograph is a personal one. Will not appear on the Broad Meadow, okay, definitely ever, but is taken at the Broad Meadow, okay. Talking to you how important running and walking is to me on a personal perspective. The gorgeous young man on the left-hand side is my nearly 20-year-old son, Joseph. And he's here with me in my lovely running gear and my daddy and my cousin Lisa. And a few months ago now, Joseph decided, as he does, to take part in the David Geddes Challenge, which entailed running 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And being the wonderfully supportive mother that I am, I sort of joined him in a few. This meant setting alarm clocks in the middle of the night. You know, it's 4 o'clock, it's 4:45, get up. You know, it's 8 o'clock, get up. And Joseph and his best friend Oren, who lives in Newtown Butler, so they didn't do it together. They did this over a 2-day period and ran their 4 miles every 4 hours for those 48 hours. And between them, I think they raised over £2,000. There are things in life where, as a mother, you're proud, and then there's this. So I was extremely proud of this particular sort of 48 hours. And again, believe it or believe it not, where we're standing there is just where you saw the slide at the very beginning of the presentation. Okay, I am finished before 1 o'clock. I have not overrun. So Joanne will have plenty of time. I'm happy if anybody wants to ask me anything or anybody has any comments. I'll try to respond to them best I can.
That was amazing, Catherine. Thank you so much. It was
Pleasure.
class. I'm gonna have to get a trip down there and see them all in person. It's so cool. It was unreal. And the PCN.
They're not up yet.
They're not up yet. Oh well. When do you expect they'll go up?
Do you know, I have my exhibition up here before they've had them there. We finalised because it's an access walk. There's just a couple of things in terms of kind of text and everything else. Hopefully within the next 3 or 4 weeks they should appear.
Unreal.
So it should be really exciting to see.
Definitely. The class. Thank you so much again.
Pleasure.
And Joanne, would you be happy enough now to take us on to some journaling?
I'm good to go. This morning I was just looking through some old journals, and this one's from about 20 years ago when I worked in Paris, and I've noticed that my handwriting has changed since then. But you can do little fat books to keep in your man bag or your handbag, and just stick in like tickets to the cinema, cheese labels, wine labels, cut and stick. Chocolate normally is in mine quite regularly. There's another one that's made out of stamps. So I was collecting like Irish tweed and like doing just tie-dye on a tissue, on a napkin, and then looking for fabrics that would go with it. So you can just sew your own pages and make a cover out of whatever you've got lying around. And I'm a bit of a world traveler. This one is from a little trip in a camper van across Portugal to the Spanish border. And just instead of stopping to take photographs, I would do little watercolors and sketches, you know, in a bar, you know, somebody making up tapas for, and there's the camper van. So I've been doing it for 30 years, and those are like little memory boxes in a book, and it acts as a container for good emotions, difficult emotions. I've had 2 breakdowns and I kept journaling. So there's no words in this book. It's nearly all images. And some of them I remember doing, some of them I don't. So my box room in the house is wall to wall with books, journals. And I thought I would get you right into doing the experience yourselves. So if you have a piece of paper or a book or a scrapbook, we're going to do what's called a sprint write. So I'm going to set the timer on my phone for 5 minutes, and you write as quickly as you can. It's going to ignore your inner critic on your shoulder that's going, you can't spell, you can't write. So the faster you write, the better it is. If you get stuck, write about the pen you're using or the room you're sitting in, and just keep going with the flow. And we'll work in silence if that's okay for folks. And so there's your timer. Good to go. Just write about anything that comes into your head. Okay, that's your 5 minutes up. You can do that at any time, just set the timer on your phone and just do that release of the subconscious, and what needs to come up will come up. I'm a big believer in that. So could I ask for the first slide for the ball of stress? Thank you very much. Okay, so in the center, you can just scribble a ball of wool or string, and try to tease out what some of those things that contribute to your stress. So we'll just take a few moments for you to do that. You can do it with a colored marker or a crayon, or just whatever you have to hand. Is that enough time for people? Have you managed to get a few things down? Great. Could you show the next slide, please? So I was lucky enough to spend a couple of summers over in America with the Native American Indians, and I traveled around with a healer, and she was talking to me, like I was asking her all these questions, and they're like, when a child asks about the rainbow, you stop and explain. So I didn't feel so bad that I was kind of interrogating her, like, what does this mean and why? So this is the medicine wheel, but it also looks like a compass, and it also looks like a Celtic cross. So if you want to draw a circle, you can do it freehand, or you can draw around something like the top of a pint glass or a plate, and then divide it in 4, north to south, east to west. You can even put the initials in if you want. And actually for some of the tribes in the east would be butterfly, would be new life in the east. In the west, it might be brown bear and kind of women's wisdom. And in the north, it might be an eagle, that view from above, taking in the whole picture. And then in the south, it might be something really close to the ground, like a mouse or the trickster, coyote. So we're looking at what nurtures you. So this is like, you can put in emotional things. I've really missed hugging people. Something physical, like trying to eat more healthy, like snacking on almonds, or superfoods, blueberries, making a smoothie. On a spiritual level, I heard some of you were doing yoga this morning. It might be bringing that practice into your daily routine, your mental. And so also like something that walking in nature that Catherine was talking about, that may cross over a number of quarters. So it's good for you spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So it actually might be the still point in the center. So we'll just take some time you can cut things out of magazines and stick them on, or you can just write the words, whatever's easiest for you. Any questions, or is that clear enough? Okay. Is that okay for people? And even, you know, you might come back to it and add other things when it comes to you. So, I mean, for me, like after a long day, I just love a bubble bath just to kind of wash it all down the plug hole. So I do have a book list that I can share with the girls if there's anybody who wants to take journaling forward. I just have a couple of wee books. Jackie Holder, she writes for Psychologies magazine and normally has a writing exercise every month. So she's JACKEE Holder. And the other one is writing meditations. So you can just work through an exercise for maybe 20 minutes. But I mean, as you can see, even 5-minute sprint write just lets you see what's going on for you for the day. So I'm happy to take any questions, or, you know, Catherine and I can both, if there's anything has come up for you that you'd like to discuss a wee bit.
Thanks so much for that. I was gonna ask a bit about, like, would you recommend people use, you know, like guided journals like you can get where they have like prompts and things like that?
Yeah.
Or do you think is it better to get your own blank one, but maybe like search for different like prompts and things like that?
Yeah. I normally prefer a blank book because then I can paint what I would call like a color wash and then dry it with a hair dryer and write over it, which is lovely. In terms of like prompts, you can, there's a journal course you can do online with a university in Denver. So it's run by a woman called Kay Adams, and she's been doing journaling for years and years. The Americans are way ahead of us.
Not in everything.
No. So, I mean, journaling started in the Japanese royal court, you know, ladies of leisure doing their watercolor of their chrysanthemum and doing their meditation. And so those are called pillow books, and they would have been around the 13th century. And then, of course, coming across Europe and alchemy and writing down lots, and like going out from here to the States as a pioneer, you know, maybe, you know, somebody in a log cabin not having a companion for months maybe. And so the journals became their best friend, and that kind of conversation daily. So there's people more into the art journaling, but I mean, for anybody, you don't need to be good at art, can just be writing in a color for that day.
I'm just thinking even too, you know, the kids things. I know Maggie Lassie has done, there are 2 or 3, you know, the breakfast journals for kids. You seen those?
No.
So there's basically, it is prompted, but it might be, you know, put something from your garden on this page, or it might be, oh, I can't think, like, and you know, they're both finished, maybe it's just 3 of them, and I'm not allowed to touch them. They're sitting in the basket, you know, beside the settee, and these are hers, and they're coloured. And I mean, even now with lockdown at the very beginning, she loves drawing. It was with blank, you know, she did it herself, and she was drawing rainbows and sayings and things like that. So that was unprompted. But, you know, her first sort of movement into it was these Wreck This Journal. There's a couple of sort of, again, American, you know, kind of creations.
Yeah. The kind of work I've been doing with the students from the art college that are studying to be art therapists, you know, I am more directive with them than I would be normally. So yeah, I mean, you can just Google it, and there's loads of stuff on the internet, you know, and particularly gratitude diaries. and the old classic, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. So you're doing your morning pages even before your breakfast, which is very hard for me to skip a meal. But yeah, there's loads out there.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really helpful. I think the color wash is a really nice idea, like because it's something about the blank page can be very like hard to get going, but that's a nice way of getting it. Thanks.
Stephen has his hand up there.
He does. Joanne, I was just going to ask you, because I do like a lot of writing in my own work. I would like to, like in painting, I would like write down the cover of canvas in words almost, and then bury it. Like if you like just
Yeah.
like, so it's mine and it's like kind of obscured, but I'm just going off on a tangent now. I don't really know where I'm going. But I was going to ask you, like, do you like exhibit any of your kind of journals or elements of your journals, like, or is it just for you?
Primarily it's for me. I would be horrified if my husband read them, because it saved my marriage. I tell you, he doesn't need to know what I've written down about him. But there's an artist, Johnny McEwen, I don't know if you know him, but he told me about, you know, you're writing your sentences and then you write over it again. So it's obliterated, but you've got out of your system what you needed to do. And then you can also do warp and weft. So you're going left to right, and then you're going north to south. So this would be an example of that. So you've got two directions going on, and it kind of makes it hard to read, but actually it's a curious exercise and it's quite nice. Like, no, I've only shown my journals publicly within NIGAT, the Northern Ireland Group for Artist Therapy. So I would do that every few years, just so people can see the reality of holding a lovely fat book. It's got lots of stuff stuck in it.
That was brilliant, Joanne. I found like my first sentences, you know, in the automatic writing or the sprint
writing, yeah.
I was like, oh, I don't know what to write. And then like 2 seconds later, I was straight to the crux of things. You know, I was kind of like, oh, not sure what to write. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And then I think it's a really good way to get to exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what happened. I don't know if people felt the same. It was like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah. And
So
Rebecca,
how hard it is to think of what to write.
Yeah. And then when the 5 minutes stopped, I was like, oh no,
yeah,
I have so much to say.
Yeah. Rebecca's got her hand up there.
I was just gonna say, like, off the back of sort of Stephen's question, would you like go back to your journals often, or you know, like how long? Because like I would write journals, keep them like just writing, but kind of just in times of stress.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go back to them, sometimes I don't. And I was just wondering, like, you've been keeping them for like 30 years.
Yeah.
Do you often like read ones, or
yeah,
you know, could it be like years between them, or?
Well, I for my dissertation training as an art therapist, I wrote about using art journals to monitor my mental health. So I was my own subject, and I signed a consent form from myself to myself, so there really was very little written about it. But because I was bipolar, I was looking at bipolar artists, and also what contributions there had been made through history for journaling. And I was reviewing it with my personal therapist at the time. So I chose certain extracts that I would read to her. And it was a very safe, confidential space. So I was able to work out what to actually put in my dissertation, which, I would sometimes look back, say when I was in hospital, it was very spidery writing, you couldn't even really read it. And then when I was high, it was manic. It was like page after page after page of stuff, you know, worships, poetry, dramas, music. And so it was really out of control. That mad genius or healthy artist, there's a fine line between the two.
That's really interesting.
Mm.
Thank you.
Well, we've 1 minute to go, ladies. Do you want to wrap it up?
Is there any other questions anybody has or any thoughts? No?
Just to say, such beautiful presentations. Catherine's, yours made me so emotional too. The butterfly thing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of hit me. I think it's when you don't think of it, and it's sometimes what kids think. You know, I kind of had a conversation, you know, with someone the other day, like, do we actually grow up and it goes backwards? You know, because sometimes their understanding and take of things is much more straightforward yet sophisticated than ours. You know, and somehow we seem to lose that. So I don't know. That's just my thought for the day.
It's beautiful. Just the thought of this beautiful butterfly floating about, not knowing.
How beautiful it is.
Yeah.
Sure. Lovely.
Never ever thought about that before. So true. But yeah, so if anybody does have any questions, I'm sure Joanna and Catherine, you know, can answer them, or you can put them in the chat just before we finish up. But if that's everything, thank you so much for coming. It's been class. This is the last session, as we've said, so we hope you really enjoyed everything and have been able to take something away from it that you can use in your day-to-day lives. I know I'll be definitely, because I don't know about you, I collect like ticket stubs and all that kind of stuff, and they're all over the place, or wee doodles that I don't have the heart to throw out. You know, a piece of paper that's scrap, and it's like, oh, I could put them in the journal. Never even thought to like do that. So I know I'll be using it. So thank you very much, and don't forget to fill out the evaluation form that I'll be getting sent out after this session, I think, or throughout the weekend at some point. So thank you all again. I hope you've had a lovely time.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so thank yous and goodbye.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye. Take care.